Fans of the Eighth Doctor have been spoiled for choice in terms of box sets and ranges from Big Finish over the past couple of years. He's had his own ranges and his quadrilogy of quadrilogies over the past few years, but from 2017 he also had his own Time War set. And not only that, he was given a brand new companion in that set called Bliss, played by Raki Thakrar. And unfortunately, over the past couple of years and months, Raki Thakrar has become an incredibly big name, has become a very, very successful actress. So she is not available anymore in order to do these Time War sets, even though Time War 4, which I've not listened to, but I have spoken to somebody who has listened to it, ends with her still being a companion of the Eighth Doctor, and now we have to go into Time War 5, kind of having to try and find a way to explain her absence, and also try and give the Doctor a brand new companion. Minor spoilers for the ending of Time War Volume 4, but it also ends with the Eighth Doctor picking up his great-grandson, Alex, who we last saw played by Sonny McGann in some other Big Finish stories several years ago, notably An Earthly Child, which is an Eighth Doctor and Susan Foreman Dalek Invasion of Earth story, like a sequel story, which personally I don't really think is very good, but Sonny McGann is an interesting family connection because he's one of the sons of Paul McGann, so keeping it in the family there. So if you recognise the name Cass, she's played by Emma Campbell-Jones, who you may remember as being the woman who died midway through The Night of the Doctor, which is the 50th anniversary story where the Eighth Doctor tries to save this stranger, Cass, from a crashing ship. She decides that they should die because she finds out that he's a Time Lord and they can't tell the difference between Time Lords and Daleks anymore, so she dies in the crash. And the Eighth Doctor also dies and is so distraught over the death that he decides to regenerate into the War Doctor thanks to the Sisterhood of Khan. It was a whole thing. So when this box set was announced that Emma Campbell-Jones would be returning to the role of Cass and would be having Time War adventures with the Eighth Doctor and also Alex, played by Sonny McGann, I know that fandom was a little bit reluctant to jump on board with the concept, because is there a way to have Cass be a companion of the Eighth Doctor in the Time War, of course pre-Night of the Doctor, because Night of the Doctor is the last night of this Doctor, without sort of belittling or sort of making that ending feel a little bit less significant than it should be, that the Eighth Doctor decides to die and try and rescue a complete stranger? Does that sort of diminish his regeneration story if he already knows who Cass is? And interestingly, Time War 5, Cass, has a very interesting solution to this problem. But before we do that, let's go over the stories. We've got Meanwhile Elsewhere by Tim Foley, we've got Vespertine by Lou Morgan, and we've got Previously Next Time by James Moran. This is a really good list of writers. James Moran, who you may remember as being the writer of The Fires of Pompeii and doing some Torchwood stuff as well. Lou Morgan is a terrific writer for Big Finish, and Tim Foley has been on one hell of a hot streak over the past couple of years, particularly on the Ninth Doctor range. A really great list of writers for a box set which honestly might be treading on eggshells so that it doesn't belittle this relationship between the Eighth Doctor and his final companion that never was. So what we're going to do is that we're going to play a clip from Meanwhile Elsewhere by Tim Foley, where the Doctor and Alex, they've landed on board this ship, which has got a bunch of weird time anomalies on it. They land on this ship, but they're actually landing on a beach. They go into another room and it's a full-on jungle because a bunch of time anomalies are converging on this spaceship, causing a load of different environments to take place on what should be a normal industrial environment. But what we'll do is that we'll play a quick clip of the Doctor meeting Cass from Meanwhile Elsewhere. We'll play a quick clip.
He's boiling now.
Hang on.
When will the med team arrive? He really needs a doctor.
I'm a doctor. They're probably not the one you're expecting. Who is he? What's wrong with him?
The captain. And not a clue.
Let me see.
Whatever this device is, it's connected automatically and seems to be working.
Oh, that's something at least.
There's no pulse.
Now the autopilot's back, we can... Wait. Who's this?
The doctor!
No, he isn't.
Yes, he is. I'm sorry, this man is dead.
Let me see.
Nope. Sorry.
Excuse me?
Both of you back. Back.
What are you doing?
Vice, look at him. His
We
skin.
need to get out of here now. No!
So it's your basic base under siege story on a spaceship, except it's got these time anomalies, and you've got the Doctor and Alex there trying to save Cass and the rest of the crew. You've also got a time ambassador there called Hieronyma Friend, played by Jay Griffiths, who does a really good performance here, but honestly, the turns that happen with her character are incredibly predictable from scene one, even though conceptually the character is quite interesting. So I think what this box set may have inadvertently done in order to try and sidestep the issue of making the Night of the Doctor feel insubstantial in light of a box set like this, is by giving Cass practically nothing to do over the course of this box set. This is meant to be a brand new companion to sort of fill in the gap of the absence of Bliss, because of course the Doctor is now travelling with Alex after the events of Time War 4, but it's never really explained what he was doing on that Dalek ship. It's not explained exactly how on earth he got to where he was at the end of that box set. So if you are wanting a resolution to the cliffhanger ending of Time War 4, if you want to know what happened to Bliss, if you want to know where Alex has been and why and the how, you're going to leave very, very disappointed, because that is just completely sidestepped. They're sort of moving on like business as usual, except we have no Bliss. We actually don't know who Bliss is. We've forgotten Bliss somehow. Here's Cass, and I don't know what's really going to happen with Cass in the near future, but Cass is basically just sort of like a hanger-on through all three stories in her own box set, and that's quite a unintended good way to sort of make sure that the Night of the Doctor isn't made insubstantial in hindsight, I guess, but I don't really think that's what the box set was going for. She sort of just assumes at the end of this story that she's going to be travelling along with the Doctor. She has her bags packed and everything, and then, because this is just how the box set has to go, the story ends with the Doctor and Alex taking her on board of the TARDIS to go on more adventures. It just feels really, really forced, and it feels like she has to become the companion of this box set because the box set is named after her. It just seems a little bit like they didn't do enough to sort of establish Cass in her own story, because Meanwhile Elsewhere is dealing with a lot of timey-wimey, a lot of complex stuff about meeting duplicate versions and meeting people in the wrong or the right order, that Cass sort of gets lost in the shuffle of it. And I think that's also an issue with making this a Time War box set as well, because you have to sort of revolve the stories, not necessarily in the Time War properly, because the Eighth Doctor is trying to avoid the Time War and sort of try and stay away from it, but you need to have these timey-wimey elements where you're messing around with time travel technology and different sort of formats and approaches to these respective stories, and I think that's a very poor environment to try and introduce a companion who the audience are meant to already have a prior attachment with the Night of the Doctor. I think it was a bit of a mismanaged approach, but and I think Meanwhile Elsewhere, despite being written by an incredible writer, it sort of lays bare the issue with this box set in general. But when it comes to the second story, the Vespertine, and I think that there's some really great dialogue in the Vespertine. I think that there's also some great casting here as well. So the Vespertine is Cass's first adventure in the TARDIS, and the Vespertine itself is this ship that went missing 100 years ago, and it was captained by Hudson Sage, who is voiced here by Simon Shepherd. And you may recognise Simon Shepherd. He played Jack Frost in the Ninth Doctor box set last year. Terrific actor. He gives a great performance as Hudson Sage here as well. So what's happened here is that it's Cass's first adventure on the TARDIS. They go to this ship, they go to this, it's this archaeological find, trying to find the remains of the Vespertine. They say that they are the advance party of a medical team in order to get the trust of the crew, and then they go down to explore the Vespertine, only to find that Hudson Sage and the Vespertine itself are not as lost as they've been led to believe. Let's play a quick clip from Vespertine.
Here, see this next step? It's like the ones upstairs, almost rotted through, but the ones at the bottom of the stairs.
They're newer?
That's not newer. Those boards are brand new.
Why would there be new boards on a ship that's been lost for 100 years?
100 years? Has it really been that long?
Hudson Sage, I presume.
Always a pleasure, Doctor. This way. Oh, excuse the mess. Do come through. I've just stoked up the stove.
How does he know you?
I haven't the foggiest.
Ow!
Mind your head on the beam there.
Then how?
Believe me, Alex, I had questions.
You've been down here all this time. You've got a stove, and a kettle, and food?
Are you hungry?
No, I mean, how? How are you here?
This is the Vespertine. My ship. Where else would I be?
The Vespertine was lost. This ship was lost. It is lost.
That's rather a matter of opinion, my dear.
So in order to try and include Cass more thematically with this story, the Vespertine, they make her so that she always wanted to travel the stars, she always wanted to explore, so as a result, she really, really looked up to this lost figure. Hudson Sage has got a statue dedicated in his honour because he was an explorer, and he's got like 3 elements on the periodic table in the future named after him. But then it turns out that Hudson Sage might not be the hero who they considered him to be, and Cass doesn't really have much of a reaction to these revelations. So it's like you've set her up with this interesting concept, this interesting character arc, and then you've not really done anything with it because the second half of Vespertine ends up sort of tying into the Where's Bliss mystery. And then it never ends up paying off over the course of the rest of the box set. And it's like, it kind of feels like Cass was made in a bit of a hurry because they realised that they couldn't get the actor who plays Bliss, but they needed to make more Time War box sets. So they just took Bliss out, put Cass in, didn't really change much of the stories. They had to put in this retroactive acknowledgement that Bliss has gone missing. It seems like a really malformed box set conceptually. That's quite disappointing. And there's also some revelations that are interesting on paper but just don't really pan out into anything wholly substantial. Vespertine was quite disappointing because I can see the seeds of a really interesting idea and then it just sort of meanders to a conclusion that the Eighth Doctor, Alex and Cass just sort of shrug their shoulders at and then they go on to the next story. It didn't really sort of contribute that much overall, which is quite disappointing. And while Sonny McGann, I think he's doing a good job as Alex in this box set, he's not really contributing a lot other than flirting with many of the people who he comes to contact with, which as the Doctor's great grandson is quite in character, I guess, especially when you've got the Eighth Doctor on board. But yeah, honestly, Vespertine and Meanwhile Elsewhere, just the main issue here is that they're not involving Cass, but you've got this whole hanging on plot thread from not only where Alex came from at the end of the last box set, but also the absence of Bliss. Thankfully, though, I will say, Previously Next Time by James Moran is a really strong end to the box set. Now, it has the same issue as the other 2 stories in this box set, in which you could basically remove Cass and very little would actually change over the course of the box set. But as a story in and of itself, as a timey-wimey, big finished box set with Paul McGann facing off against the Daleks, it's actually pretty good. The premise is that the Doctor, Cass and Alex, they stop a Dalek plan, they blow up this Dalek headquarters, and then when they wake up from the debris of the explosion, they find that an entirely brand new civilization has been birthed from the explosion that wasn't there before. They've gone a year back in time, but when they went to stop the Dalek, plan, this was an uninhabited planet. Where did the civilization come from? And it's a really, really interesting premise for a story when they know that the Daleks are going to be coming very shortly in order to terraform the planet for their Time War plan. But they also have this civilization that they need to try and navigate around. That's a really interesting premise, a really, really good concept. And there's some wonderful scenes early on when the Eighth Doctor is being interrogated by one of the security officers of the planet, and he's just running circles around him. Paul McGann does such a great job with the dialogue. I think James Moran has picked up the personality of the Eighth Doctor incredibly smoothly and efficiently. I think James Moran's writing is really, really top tier here for the Eighth Doctor, really, really getting into the beating heart of this character. Like I said, I think Cass and Alex are sort of like spare parts here, but there is some really interesting stuff done with one of the characters on the planet, played by Nadia Albina. Now, you may recognise that name. She played Di in Doctor Who Flux, and she plays a character called Oshia here, who is basically the only person who kind of maybe sort of believes the Doctor, Cass and Alex's story, because if they were going to come up with a lie, why wouldn't it be a much more believable one? And they have to try and come up with a plan in order to stop the oncoming Dalek invasion. Let's play a clip from Previously Next Time. There is no image. I don't know why it's done that. If you go on the files, there's an image there. So anyway, I will put this on screen and we'll just pretend that this never happened, okay?
This is our weapons stockpile. More than enough, I think you'll find.
Right, this is just a load of swords.
And longbows.
Forgive me, yes, I didn't mention the wooden bows and arrows. They'll definitely go right through a metal Dalekanium shell.
These are armor-piercing.
I mean, I wasn't seriously thinking of going into battle here. It's just to buy us a little time, but this, they won't even be distracted for a second.
Our weapons are a match for any invaders.
Not these. You haven't seen anything like them. They will start firing from above. Most people will be killed before they even know the attack has started. Even if these swords and bows were 1,000 times more powerful, we wouldn't be able to reach them.
You're afraid of them.
Very much so.
It's not a look you're used to, being humbled. Suits you, though. Makes you look more normal.
Well, thank you, but it doesn't help. There's a heavily armed Dalek ship on the way, and we have got a room full of pointy sticks.
I was in a battle about 5 years ago. We only had short-range weapons, swords, maces. They were hammering us with wave after wave of arrows. We couldn't get near them.
What did you do?
We knew we couldn't get closer to them, so we had to draw them to us. Bring the fight to where we had the advantage. We fell back, made it look like we were retreating, dug into some shelter. They put their bows away, moved in to finish us off, and it did not end well for them.
Well, that could work. If the Daleks think this will be an easy victory, they'll come down to do it themselves rather than just using the ship's guns. Lord it over the place, show off.
And I've just realised when listening to that clip and watching this cover art, this Dalek with the syringe, I don't think actually appears in the box set at all. I don't recall a Dalek with a syringe at all being mentioned, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. I think that it's a really, really strong end to the box set. I think that Previously Next Time is the head and shoulders stand out of the box set. It's a really great two-part story, a really great cliffhanger ending as well to part one, leading into part two. It's really, really good. But once again, it just ties into the issues with the box set generally. You could take Cass and Alex out of it and not much would change. Everything about the Eighth Doctor and the Daleks and the Time War and everything happening with Nadia Albina's character, that's all really, really good. And there's a really good mystery unfolding as to why the inhabitants of this planet do not know what the Daleks are or the Time War. They have absolutely zero experience or recollection with any of these things, which should be like universal knowledge at this point. And that's really, really interesting. How do you convince these people who don't know what a Dalek is that there is a species out there that will kill just for the sake of killing, and they're trying to wrap their heads around it like, oh, well, what will they do once they've killed everybody? Like, there'll be nothing to get angry at, or there'll be nothing to complain about. And, you know, that's some interesting meta commentary there by James Moran, who has really written a really good two-parter for this box set. As a box set overall, though, I was kind of disappointed in this. I went into this sort of with the benefit of the doubt, because, you know, there is some... I think that there could be some really interesting ideas with the Eighth Doctor and Cass, and, you know, some dramatic irony with this being the companion who he meets at the end of his tenure as the Doctor, as he meets a rather unglamorous fate for the most glamorous of Doctors. I think there is some drama to be mined here, but when it comes to this box set overall, it just doesn't seem interested in exploring that, or at least not right now. It does end on a sort of maybe a cliffhanger, and the next Time War box set is coming out in like Q2 of 2024, so we've got a long time to wait for this story arc to continue, if it does continue at all. Like I said, Time War 4 ended with a cliffhanger ending, and Time War 5 has just opened with business as usual. We'll address that later, so it's kind of hard to get invested in the resolution of these cliffhangers because they might never ever come, and Emma Campbell-Jones might never be in a Big Finish box set as Cass again. And what's most frustrating of all, though, is that Big Finish in the Time War have already done a subversion of the Doctor and Cass as a companion. It was the first story in the War Doctor Begins Battlegrounds, The Keeper of Light, where the War Doctor teams up with the same actor, Emma Campbell-Jones as Layla Bridge. Like, they already did this last year. And not only was the story so much better, but the dramatic irony and everything that you'd expect from a Cass box set or a Cass story, it was done here already. I don't know what the point of Time War Cass is, unfortunately, and it seems like that the box set spends 4 hours, 4 stories, not justifying its existence, and that was kind of disappointing. Meanwhile, elsewhere in Vespertine, were fine, they were okay. They just felt a little bit haphazard in their structure, and their resolutions didn't really amount to much. And Previously Next Time is a very good 8th Doctor Dalek story, but outside of those confines, there's just not really a lot here. Unfortunately, I can't really recommend this box set. It was quite disappointing. Everyone's on fire in terms of the production and the cast, as you can be expected of Big Finish. I think Paul McGann and Emma Campbell-Jones, they've got great interplay. They've obviously, kept in touch and stayed friends since the Night of the Doctor. But in terms of there being a complete box set here, in terms of them actually developing Cass as a character, it kind of fails at the mission statement, which is quite disappointing.